Okay, well, good evening, everyone. My name is Amy Carrick, and I am going to be reading an extract from The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon. And I am reading in support of my colleagues and fellow actors in Belarus, and any money raised this evening through donations goes towards producing a play in Belarusian. So thank you very much in advance for any donations. And I believe there is a link in the comment section below. So let's begin. It was after midnight. The dog was lying on the grass in the middle of the lawn in front of Mrs. Shear's house. Its eyes looked as if it was running on its side, the way dogs run when they think they are chasing a cat in a dream. But the dog was not running or asleep. The dog was dead. There was a garden fork sticking out of the dog. The points of the fork must have gone all the way through the dog and into the ground because the fork had not fallen over. I decided the dog was probably killed with the fork because I could not see any other wounds in the dog. And I do not think you would stick a garden fork into a dog after it had died for some other reason, like cancer, for example, or a road accident. But I could not be certain about this. I went through Mrs. Shear's gate, closing it behind me. I walked onto her lawn and knelt beside the dog. I put my hand on the muzzle of the dog. It was still warm. The dog was called Wellington. It belonged to Mrs. Shears, who was our friend. She lived on the opposite side of the road, 2 houses to the left. Wellington poodle. Not one of the small poodles that have hairstyles, but a big poodle. It had curly black fur, but when you got close, you could see that the skin underneath the fur was a very pale yellow, like chicken. I stroked Wellington. Why? My name is Christopher John Francis Boone. I know all the countries of the world and their capital cities, and every prime number up to 7,507. 8 years ago, when I first met Siobhan, she showed me this picture. And I knew that it meant sad, which is what I felt when I found the dead dog. Then she showed me this picture. And I knew that it meant happy, like when I'm reading about the Apollo or when I am still awake at 3 or 4 in the morning and I can walk up and down the street and pretend that I am the only person in the whole world. Then she drew some other pictures. But I was unable to say what these meant. I got Siobhan to draw lots of these faces and then write down next to them exactly what they meant. I kept the piece of paper in my pocket and took it out when I didn't understand what someone was saying. But it was very difficult to decide which of the diagrams was most like the face they were making because people's faces move very quickly. That I was doing this, she got out a pencil and another piece of paper and said it probably made people feel very confused. And then she laughed. So I tore the original piece of paper up and threw it away. And Siobhan apologised. And now if I don't know what someone is saying, I ask them what they mean or I walk away. I pulled the fork out of the dog and lifted him into my arms and hugged him. He was leaking blood from the fork holes. I like dogs. You always know what a dog is thinking. It has 4 moods: happy, sad, cross, and concentrating. Also, dogs are faithful and they do not tell lies because they cannot talk. I had been hugging the dog for 4 minutes when I heard screaming. I looked up and saw Mrs. Shears running towards me from the patio. She was wearing pyjamas and a housecoat. Her toenails were painted bright pink, and she had no shoes on. She was shouting, "What have you done to my dog?" I do not like people shouting at me. It makes me scared that they are going to hit me or touch me, and I do not know what is going to happen. "Let go of the dog," she shouted. "Let go of the dog for Christ's sake." I put down the dog on the lawn and moved back 2 meters. She bent down. I thought she was going to pick up the dog herself, but she didn't. Perhaps she noticed how much blood there was and didn't want to get dirty. Instead, she started screaming again. I put my hands over my ears and I closed my eyes and rolled forward till I was hunched up with my forehead pressed onto the grass. The grass was wet and cold. It was nice. This is a murder mystery novel. Siobhan said that I should write something I would want to read myself. Mostly, I read books about science and maths. I do not like proper novels. In proper novels, people say things like, "I am veined with iron, with silver, and with streaks of common mud. I cannot contract into the firm fist which those clench who do not depend on stimulus." What does this mean? I do not know, nor does Father, nor do Siobhan or Mr. Jevons. I have asked them. Siobhan has long blonde hair and wears glasses, which are made of green plastic, and Mr. Jevons smells of soap and wears brown shoes that have approximately 60 tiny circular holes in each of them. But I do like murder mystery novels, so I'm writing a murder mystery novel. In a murder mystery novel, someone has to work out who the murderer is and catch them. It is a puzzle. If it is a good puzzle, you can sometimes work out the answer before the end of the book. Siobhan said that the book should begin with something to grab people's attention. That is why I started with the dog. I also started with the dog because it happened to me, and I find it hard to imagine things which did not happen to me. Siobhan read the first page and said that it was different. She put this word into inverted commas by making the wiggly quotation sign with her first and second fingers. She said that this was usually people who were killed in murder mystery novels. I said that 2 dogs were killed in The Hound of the Baskervilles, the hound itself, and James Mortimer's spaniel. But Siobhan said they weren't the victims of the murder. Sir Charles Baskerville was. She said that this was because readers cared more about people than dogs. So if a person was killed in the book, readers would want to carry on reading. I said that I wanted to write about something real, and I knew people who had died, but I did not know any people who had been killed, except Edward's father from school, Mr. Paulson, and that was a gliding accident, not murder, and I didn't really know him. I also said that I cared about dogs because they were faithful and honest, and some dogs were clever and more interesting than some people. Steve, for example, who comes to school on Thursdays, needs help to eat his food and could not even fetch a stick. Siobhan asked me not to say this to Stephen's mother. Then the police arrived. I like the police. They have uniforms and numbers, and you know what they're meant to be doing. There was a policewoman and a policeman. The policewoman had a little hole in her tights on her left ankle and a red scratch in the middle of it. The policeman had a big orange leaf stuck to the bottom of his shoe, which was poking out from one side. The policewoman put her arms around Mrs. Shears and led her back towards the house. I lifted my head off the grass. The policeman squatted down beside me and said, "Would you like to tell me what's going on here, young man?" I sat up and said, "The dog is dead." "I'd got that far," he said. I said, "I think someone killed the dog." "How old are you?" he asked. I replied, "I am 15 years and 3 months and 2 days. "And what precisely were you doing in the garden?" he asked. "I was holding the dog," I replied. "And why were you holding the dog?" he asked. This was a difficult question. It was something I wanted to do. I like dogs. It made me sad to see that the dog was dead. I like policemen too, and I wanted to answer the question properly, but the policeman did not give me enough time to work out the correct answer. "Why were you holding the dog?" he asked again. "I like dogs," I said. "Did you kill the dog?" he asked. I said, "I did not kill the dog." "Is this your fork?" he asked. I said, "No." "You seem very upset about this," he said. He was asking too many questions, and he was asking them too quickly. They were stacking up in my head like loaves in the factory where Uncle Terry works. The factory is a bakery, and he operates the slicing machines. And sometimes the slicer is not working fast enough, but the bread keeps coming and there is a blockage. I sometimes think of my mind as a machine, but not always a bread slicing machine. It makes it easier to explain to other people what is going on inside it. The policeman said, "I'm going to ask you once again." I rolled back onto the lawn and pressed my forehead to the ground again and made the noise that father calls groaning. I make this noise when there is too much information coming into my head from the outside world. It is like when you're upset and you hold the radio against your ear and you tune it halfway between two stations, so all you get is white noise, and then you turn the volume right up so that this is all you can hear, and then you know that you're safe because you cannot hear anything else. The policeman took hold of my arm and lifted me to my feet. I didn't like him touching me like this, and this is when I hit him. The policeman looked at me for a while without speaking. Then he said, "I am arresting you for assaulting a police officer." Because it is what policemen say on television and in films. Then he said, "I strongly advise you to get into the back of the police car, because if you try any of that monkey business again, I will seriously lose my rag. Is that understood?" I walked over to the police car, which was parked just outside the gate. I opened the back door and I got inside. He climbed into the driver's seat and made the call on his radio to the policewoman who was still inside the house. He said, "He's just had a pop at me, Kate. Can you hang on with Mrs. S whilst I drop him off at the station? I'll get Tony to swing by and pick you up." And she said, "Sure, catch you later." The policeman said, "Okie dokie," and we drove off. The police car smelt of hot plastic and aftershave and takeaway chips. I watched the sky as we drove towards the town centre. It was a clear night and you could see the Milky Way. Some people think that the Milky Way is a long line of stars, but it isn't. Our galaxy is a huge disk of stars, millions of light years across the solar system, somewhere near the outside edge of the disk. When I got to the police station, they made me take the lace out of my shoes and empty my pockets at the front desk in case I had anything in them that I could use to kill myself or escape or attack a policeman with. The sergeant behind the desk had very hairy hands, and he had bitten his nails so much that they bled. This is what I had in my pockets: a Swiss Army knife with 13 attachments, including a wire stripper and a saw and a toothpick and tweezers, a piece of string, a wooden puzzle, 3 pellets of rat food for my pet rat, Toby, £1.47, a red paper clip, a key for the front door. I was also wearing my watch and they wanted me to leave this at the desk as well. But I said that I needed my watch to be on because I needed to know the exact time. When they tried to take it off, I screamed, so they let me keep it on. They asked me if I had any family. I said I did. They asked me who my family was. I said it was my father, but my mother was dead. And I said it was Uncle Terry, but he was also in Sunderland. And he was father's brother, and it was my grandparents too. But 3 of them were dead, and Grandma Burton was in a home because she had senile dementia and thought that I was someone on the television. Then they asked me for father's phone number. I told them that he had 2 numbers, one for at home and one which was a mobile, and I said both of them. It was a nice police cell. It was almost a perfect cube, 2 meters long by 2 meters wide and 2 meters high. It contained approximately 8 cubic meters of air. It had a small window with bars on, and at the opposite side, a metal door with a long, thin hatch near the floor for sliding trays of food into the cell, and a sliding hatch higher up so that policemen could look in and check that the prisoners hadn't escaped. I wondered how I would escape if I was in a story. Difficult, because the only things I had were my clothes and my shoes, which had no laces in them. I decided that my best plan would be to wait for a really sunny day and then use my glasses to focus the sunlight on a piece of my clothing and start a fire. I would then make my escape when they saw the smoke and took me out of the cell. I wonder whether Mrs. Shears had told the police that I had killed Wellington, and whether, when the police found out that she had lied, she would go to prison, because telling lies about people is called slander. I find people confusing. This is for 2 main reasons. The first main reason is that people do a lot of talking without using any words. Siobhan says that if you raise one eyebrow, it can mean lots of different things, such as, I think what you just said was very stupid. Siobhan says that if you close your mouth and breathe out loudly through your nose, it can mean that you are relaxed, or that you are bored, or that you are angry. And it all depends on how much air comes out of your nose and how fast, and what shape your mouth is when you do it, and how you are sitting and what you said before, and hundreds of other things which are too complicated to work out in a few seconds. The second main reason is that people often talk using metaphors. These are examples of metaphors. I laughed my socks off. He was the apple of her eye. They had a skeleton in the cupboard. We had a real pig of a day. The dog was stone dead. The word metaphor means carrying something from one place to another, and it comes from a Greek word. I think it should be called a lie, because a pig is not like a day, and people do not have skeletons in their cupboards. And when I try and make a picture of the phrase in my head, it just confuses me, because imagining an apple in someone's eye doesn't have anything to do with liking someone a lot, and it makes you forget what the person was talking about. This makes you wonder. Mother used to say that Christopher was a nice name because it was a story about being kind and helpful, but I do not want my name to mean a story about being kind and helpful. I want my name to mean me. It was 1:12 a.m. when Father arrived at the police station. I did not see him until 1:28 a.m., but I knew he was there because I could hear him. He was shouting, "I want to see my son. And why on earth is he locked up? Of course I'm angry." Then I heard the policeman telling him to calm down. Then I heard nothing for a long time. At 1:28 a.m., a policeman opened the door of the cell and told me that there was someone to see me. I stepped outside. Father was standing in the corridor. He held up his right hand and spread his fingers out in a fan. I held up my left hand and spread my fingers out in a fan. We made our fingers and thumbs touch each other. We do this because sometimes Father wants to give me a hug, but I do not like hugging people. So we do this instead, and it means that he loves me. Then the policeman told us to follow him down the corridor to another room. In the room was a table and 3 chairs. He told us to sit down on the far side of the table. There was a tape recorder on the table, and I asked whether I was going to be interviewed and if he was going to record the interview. He said, "I don't think that there will be any need for that." He was an inspector. I could tell because he wasn't wearing a uniform. He also had a very hairy nose. It looked as if there were 2 very small mice hiding in his nostrils. He said, "I have spoken to your father and he says that you didn't mean to hit the policeman." I didn't say anything because this wasn't a question. He said, "Did you mean to hit the policeman?" I said, "Yes." He squeezed his face and said, "But you didn't mean to hurt the policeman." I thought about this and said, "No, I didn't mean to hurt the policeman. I just wanted him to stop touching me." Then he said, "You know that it is wrong to hit a policeman, don't you?" I said, "I do." He was quiet for a few seconds. Then he asked, "Did you kill the dog, Christopher?" I said, "I didn't kill the dog." He said, "Do you know that it is wrong to lie to a policeman and that you can get into a very great deal of trouble if you do?" I said, "Yes." He said, "So do you know who killed the dog?" I said, "No." He said, "Are you telling the truth?" I said, "Yes, I always tell the truth." He said, "Right, I'm going to give you a caution." I asked, "Is that going to be on a piece of paper, like a certificate I can keep?" He replied, "No. A caution means that we are going to keep a record of what you did, that you hit a policeman, but that it was an accident and that you didn't mean to hit the policeman." I said, "But it wasn't an accident." And Father said, "Christopher, please." And that's where we'll have to stop for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. And I hope to be able to read to you all again and we find out a little bit more about what happened to Christopher and the dog Wellington. Thank you very much and have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.